Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the United Ones podcast. We are on episode number 21. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF National Champion, a former UCF radio host, and several podcasters shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. And, of course, our resident-owned 7-footer, Ben Stout, who does not fit in the screen. But that being said, let's have a quick rundown. It's been an eventful week since last we spoke. We went on a tirade about hoops, and apparently it was motivation. Hopefully we became the bulletin board material for the hoops team, and they continue to respond the way that they have in the last week. So we're going to talk a little hoops this week. We're going to talk about the KU fun and the BYU battle. A little bit about Mikey Williams. We'll talk about UCF football and some of the goings on there. Some exciting news there. We have the final list of signees of folks that are coming in until at least the next period, which is in May. Trey's going to grace us with a little bit of his pro day experience so you guys can understand what these student athletes are going through as they transition from college to football. And then we're going to do a little UCF student re-education about Matt Prater, one of the, I think, one of our potential first Hall of Famers. And then our normal stuff and talk a little bit about other UCF sports. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in the squad. We are short our producer this week, so I apologize for that. My production quality will not be as good as what we normally get, but he will be back next week. So first and foremost, the man who barely fits on the screen, Ben Stout, welcome to the show, my friend.
What is up?
Oh, there it is. There it is. Are we doing this
guys.
too? Come on, do this too.
Do this thing?
Yeah, do the double. There you are, the double thumbs up. Okay, guys, for those that are not viewing this on, oh my gosh, Ben is on an Apple product and has. And if you're viewing this on YouTube, he's on an Apple product, and all these new emojis. Every time he throws a thumbs up or a double thumbs up, stuff happens in the back of his screen. So, I don't know how you feel about that, but we've got a little bit more entertainment.
Yeah. Good to be here, Roger.
Yeah, I'm excited, man, to see what happens behind your screen because you get pretty animated. Then we have Trey Neal. Welcome back. He's coming to us from his couch this week. Welcome back, Trey Neal.
What's up? Yeah, I've been banished this week into the couch because.
Hold on. Is there trouble in paradise?
No. My wife is doing some work that she has to be done, so she takes priority. I normally have. I had it last night if we did it on Monday, but tonight I was kicked out.
So you're practicing the happy wife, happy life philosophy to marriage. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. I like
always a good philosophy.
I like to go to sleep in peace. So
awesome. And as we'd like to welcome Alan back to the stage, one of our favorite people. Love you, Alan. Welcome back. Don't listen to anything Josh says to disparage you on previous shows. I'm just saying.
Hey, guys. Good to be back.
Happy to have you, my friend. And then last but not least, but always last, Josh Lazar. Welcome back.
Hey now.
Are you doing Nobra's intro now?
No, I'm doing Howard Stern's intro. So that's I need to work on something, but we're doing a throwback. So for those of you listeners from episode 20, we already are doing it again. So it's great.
What that is, Josh, is that's a bite off of a bite off of a bite off of, and then you're biting a fourth time. So that's a fourth time.
Listen,
bite.
I'm a biter, not a writer. So it's all right.
Wow. Well, learning more peeling back the onions of Josh Lazar. I don't, whatever you do at home, that you keep that to yourself. It's like Vegas, bro.
That is. So I understand your musical background is not the same genres I listen to, but I'm throwing in lyrics every single episode I can now. So,
all right. Well, I can tell you this: Nobra appreciated them after you said it, and he listened back to the show last week. So, definitely exciting stuff. All right. So this week, this week we're going to be talking a little bit more hoops. Obviously, that's what's in season. Baseball is on the horizon, softball, spring sports, although some of the other sports are underway. Men's tennis, for one. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's all about hoops right now. And we had a lot to say in the last episode about our hoops team and Johnny Dawkins and how we felt after K-State. We talked about a lot, and I think that it's interesting because there was a lot of conversation at the time about whether we were the vocal minority, right, or we were the majority, and we even had our own discussions within the team here about what we should take away from that performance and our first Big 12, game. And then, I think it was pretty unanimous. All of us said that, Johnny's seat gets warmer if we don't see at least some fight. And what we said was Night Nation, if we were being destroyed and week in and week out, and we weren't at least being competitive, then there would be that seat would get a lot hotter. So this week, mixed bag, but still a positive, in my opinion, right? So obviously we beat Kansas, which was something that was, I think, unexpected by Bill Self. And a lot of people, including us, we were all writing that off as a loss. So not only did we keep it close, we came back, what was it, like a 16-point lead to win, or deficiency that they had, a lead that they had to win, which was nuts. And then we had BYU, where we went down for a little while. And although we couldn't pull it off, and we'll talk about the reasons why a little bit later, it was still a good and solid showing from our team. We are not being outclassed, and that's all we asked for. So, exciting for me, at least, to talk about that. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Ben, I'm gonna hand you the football, and I'm gonna allow you to start us out on the K-Hawk, or Kansas Jayhawk, walk right out of the arena.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want you to, while you recap the week really well, Roger, I don't think we can possibly oversell or over talk about just how big that win was. Arguably the biggest hoops win in the history of the program. I continue to say it's the biggest regular season win in the history of the program, because whenever you win an NCAA tournament game, it just obviously
does it just mean more?
That, and you circle that. I avoided saying that, but absolutely, man, it was the biggest regular season win, and there's no doubt about that in the program's history, and it was just significant. I mean, on this show last week, I think I agree. We definitely talked about. And I'll say this, I'll add to what you said earlier on the show last week. We talked about if we continue to see what we saw at Kansas State, then obviously the seat not only gets hot, but it gets lava hot for Johnny Dawkins. But I'll remind everybody, and I'll remind you, Roger, that at the end of that statement, I said, but I don't think we're going to see this night in and night out. And what we've seen in the last week, and honestly, the 5 or 6, I believe it's been 6 now, and I'll have to double check on that. It has been 5, it has been 5 total quad 1 or quad 2 games so far, and that we've had. So that's BYU, Kansas, Miami, Kansas State, and Ole Miss. So that's the 4 I mentioned first were all quad 1 games. The Ole Miss game was a quad 2 game, and I think that's only because it was at home. But I think what we're finding now is that, at least after this past week, I think what we're finding now is that, given those 5 games, that the Kansas State game was a little bit more of the exception than the rule. Now, I'll obviously say that we only won one of those games. So, I mean, you got to win them to really get credit for it, especially in the net rankings. But I think what we've discovered here is that the Kansas State game is more of the exception as far as how we played and how we're going to be able to battle in these games than the rule. I'm not saying the Kansas game is necessarily the rule, but certainly what we've found with this team this year is that they do have a lot of fight in them. They are really focused and trying to battle every second, no matter what happens. And unfortunately, at Kansas State, it was just kind of everything kind of piled on in the very beginning of the game, and they kind of couldn't get out of it. But the Kansas game was just unbelievable. The way that they bounced back and the way that they felt the moment of the first Big 12 game at home, the Big 12 home opener against like the bluest of the blue bloods, as I called them last week, I believe. The way that they handled that moment, battled so much early on, as you said, got down by 16 at one point in the first half, just stayed the course, played, kind of took it from that 5-minute mark going into halftime and really chipped away at it, made a little run there, and then came out of halftime with just an unbelievable fire. Some of the adjustments that were made at halftime, moving Shemari Allen to the point, I think was just an unbelievable adjustment on the coaching staff's part and the team's part to be able to execute that. Not that Shemari Allen had a ton of assists or whatever, but just allowing DJ to play off the ball was a huge move, huge adjustment at the half. And then the defensive adjustments at the half were just unbelievable. I mean, coming out in that matchup zone, I think it had just allowed us that kind of 3-2 matchup zone that we came out of halftime with. It just allowed us to kind of stay so active in the passing lanes and really kind of disrupt what Kansas was trying to do on offense. And then lastly, I'll say the biggest coaching decision that was probably made that game, and those first two I mentioned were huge. But to start Ibrahim Diallo and CJ Walker in the starting lineup for the first time all season, having those two guys in the starting lineup from the beginning of the game, in particular, a guy like Diallo, who is a defensive menace, but to go against arguably the best big man in the country, or at least the best big man in the Big 12, and show out like he did. I'm glad he rewarded that starting performance with an amazing game, and he followed that up with a great game at BYU as well, which we can talk about. But I'm just so proud of the guys, so proud to be a part of Night Nation, that we were able to pull off that win and storm the court.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things I wanted to pull out of that, that analysis. And again, that's very top level analysis. But one, the net rankings, right? So with them being in the conference that we're in, we're not going to be penalized for losses as greatly as what we would if we were in the American, right? Even if they're at home. And you're right, I was going to bring up the point that we only had one quad one win, right? Because obviously Miami, we hung around for 3 quarters, but then got blown out. Ole Miss, that was a tight one all the way to the wire. BYU was to the wire. We won KU. And realistically speaking, as we get into conference play, if I told you that we were going to be 3-1 in that stretch, or 1-3 in that stretch, 1-2 in that stretch. Wow.
Yeah. So far, 1-2
games, right? Yeah. I think everybody would take that, but they would have thought that it was K-State that we would have won, as opposed to
Kansas. Or at least BYU. I don't think anybody would have predicted Kansas.
No, I agree with you there. And what I'll say to that is BYU should have been a win too. If we had
won easily.
If we had shot just a little bit better, if we had shot our free throws anywhere close to what we had shot against Kansas, and we've been harping on that all season long, is the free throws. And I haven't even looked at the statistics yet on our free throws, but I think it was somewhere around.
It was low.
Well, we wound up a little bit over around our season average at about 61-62% of the game, but that was because in the second half we shot much better from the free throw line. The first half was like god awful. So and it really kind of the fact that we were even close at halftime with how poorly we shot, especially from the free throw line in the first half, was just rough.
We shot a full 15% higher in the Kansas game, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
So, and we had, as a team, we had 33 free throws. 33. We only had 18 in the Kansas game. So, as much as we complained about the disparity at K-State, you have 33 free throws.
Mm-hmm.
You're leaving 12 points on the table. And this realistically was not a 5-point win. This was a 2-point win.
Yeah, I mean, just getting some of those free throws back, right? I mean, obviously no team, or very rarely do you see a team shoot over 20 free throws in a game and make all of them. But certainly if you got 5 of those 12 ones you missed back, I mean, all of a sudden you're going into overtime or probably winning.
Yeah. So let's break down the Kansas game a little bit by the numbers, right? So I'm going to run through some stats here on what went well, what didn't. Our field goal percentage was actually less than what Kansas's was. Kansas shot 51.1% for the game. We shot 42. However, we had 52 attempts, whereas they only had 47. We turned them over quite a bit. We isolated their big and made him foul, which is one of the most celebrated bigs in the country, right?
Hunter Dickinson, a guy that was expected to be phenomenal player,
right? And was expected to be. Many expected him to be a lottery pick this year, in this year's NBA draft, but decided to come back and, quite frankly, made him look mediocre and frustrated him. Put him on the bench for a while with early fouls by attacking the paint. And that's what we were talking about that we were missing against K-State, was the ability to attack the paint. We did that this game. 3-point from the field, we shot 35% versus Kansas's 30%. So again, something we did not do very well, either in K-State or BYU. Free throws, 14 for 18, 77.8, so 78%. Rebounds,
much higher than our average.
Yeah. We hover around 70, right? So 68 to 70%. Kansas shot atrociously. They were at 54.5. So one of the things you talked about was, the game. Night Nation packed the arena and was very vocal for both games. And we saw the birth of a new tradition, quote unquote tradition, the Fear the Frond, with the palm fronds from the Storm. And it seems to do really well, and everybody seemed to like it. But Night Nation was really vocal. I mean, we had over 9,000 in attendance for both of those games, BYU and Kansas. And they were very, very vocal, energized the whole time. And it really felt like Big 12 basketball in the arena, which, there have been a few games, maybe a handful, that have been that loud, in our history. And if this continues, right, I think there's a lot of excitement that can be had. And storming the court after Kansas, you made a lot of young students basketball fans for life by doing that and giving them an experience like that. Now, granted, we were, of course, fined immediately after that by the Big 12. But, at the end of the day, that was worth it. Let's talk a little bit more assists. Now, Kansas, they torched us on assists. We did beat them on offensive rebounds. And that's something that we, did well early on in the pre-conference season, and then have now carried that over into the Big 12. Our bigs, because of our rotation of bigs and how many we have, it's really it's really shown itself out. They've showed out the first few Big 12 games because we have had the ability to do it. However, it's not just the bigs. It's guys like Shemari Allen. Every time you see Shemari Allen grabbing boards, following his shot, you see a lot of him following his shot, and just those little fundamental things that he does really well. As much as we complain about some of the fundamental things that we didn't see, those are things that make a key difference in that ratio. Steals, we had 8 steals versus Kansas's 6. Blocks, we had 7 blocks versus their 2. Turnovers.
CJ Walker with 3 blocks himself. That's huge.
Well,
and Diallo had 1 block on the game, but he changed so many shots that it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. His presence in the middle and his ability to change shots was just it was the difference in my opinion. But obviously, some of the blocks that CJ had in particular, but you also mentioned Shemari Allen were we might have turned the ball over. This happened a lot in the first half. We turned the ball over, but we chase down and get a block to stop them from scoring points off that turnover. There's just a lot of things that just we weren't giving up on, even if we made a mistake. So that was great to see.
Yeah, we turned them over 18 times, and you have a good chance to win a game if you're
no doubt
competitive on that, and turn them over 18 times. If you keep we had 13 turnovers. If we keep our turnovers low and turn them over quite a bit, we have a really, really good chance of winning. In fact, we scored 18 points off of turnovers. So that's a phenomenal number. And fast break points. The crazy thing is fast break points. Kansas scored 13. We scored 6 points in the paint, 32-26, Kansas's way. And fouls 15-13. I think there's a big difference in home court advantage when it comes to fouls in the Big 12. And I think we've seen that twice now. We just didn't take advantage of it against BYU. Ultimately, though, what we saw a lot more of was CJ Walker in the paint. We had our bigs in the paint. They lasted for most of the game. And they just seemed consistent. To your point, chipping away. Basketball is a game of runs, and when you're down big, it's okay. You don't have to panic unless it's the last 8 minutes or something like that, right? If it's early on in the first half, you have the ability to do it. And I remember, we were talking about K-State and saying, hey, let's just get it down to 8, right? Well, we got it down to 8. It really was 6, but we had it at 8 at the half, and that just stuck in my mind. And I think you said in our text talk, you said, I have a feeling they're going to come out of the half, really strong. And they just chipped away and took control of the game. And quite frankly, the body language for Kansas, they were just exasperated.
Yeah, my favorite thing about when they took the lead in the second half, they were just we're not going to give this up. And they didn't. I mean, they just built upon it. They stayed aggressive after that. It wasn't they just took the lead and they were just trying to hang on for dear life, run out the clock. They were we're going to keep staying aggressive. We're going to keep doing the things that got us the lead. And that was really good to see. I mean, I'm sitting there with my family and we're all screaming. I remember 8 minutes left. I'm just yelling at the screen, stay aggressive, stay aggressive, stay aggressive. Do what you got do what you did to get you here. And I was happy to see how they just really closed the show. Once they realized that they can hang with these guys and really, they chipped away at it, as we said. Once they took the lead, they were we're not giving up. And then you see, as you mentioned, Roger, you see the pressure build up on Kansas, right?
Right.
You see them start to get a little rattled, whoa, are we about to lose this game? And they couldn't handle it. And it was something else to see. And I hope that we can, we can continue to show that. We saw a lot of that fight with the BYU game, but really just show that, especially on the road.
We saw energy from them, right? Yeah. We're seeing them fist pump. We're seeing them get excited. We're seeing CJ Walker yell and scream on the court when something good happens.
Jaylin Sellers, man. I mean, just the dunks and stuff he was doing.
Well, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Jaylin Sellers, will the real Jaylin Sellers please stand up? You know what I mean? He's been playing poorly. We said it week after week for 4 or 5 weeks. There you go. There's a rap lyric for you, Josh Lazar. But realistically, you know, that's the Jaylin Sellers we expect, right? Someone with confidence who's not playing hero ball, who's taking his shots when he has them. Early on, he was taking more passes and shooting in that 12 to 15 foot range and having success, which then opened up the floor because they had to pull out and space a little bit better as the defense came out to try to meet him because he could hit that 12 to 14 foot jumper, right? And that's what we were looking for Jaylin Sellers, because realistically speaking, you've got DJ who can either be really on and he hit his threes early, right? Or he can be off and need a reset, right? And then you've got Shemari Allen, who I think with him, it's just his confidence to drive to the paint. He can make things happen. It's just like he goes into modes where he'd rather dish the ball, which sometimes other people besides DJ and I think there's a little bit of, hey, I'm going to defer to DJ when he's playing shooting guard. And I think that's why Johnny Dawkins said, Shemari, go out there and be the number one point guard. You know, I want you to be on point. We'll shift DJ to a shooting guard position because he's not on. So he just needs to have that. He's extremely athletic. When you see him getting the rebounds for a guard, you see where his hands are when he jumps up. His hand is well above the rim. I mean, he's probably up to his forearm, almost to halfway. So he has the ability to jump. He just needs to be aggressive because – go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he's kind of like the guard version, just to use another UCF player as an analogy. Like he's like the guard version of Chad Brown. Like he's the guy that like does like whatever it takes to like bring his team to to success. I mean, he's kind of like a glue guy for this team. I think he's one of the ones that Dawkins was talking about in the beginning of the season that, just as soon as he came onto this team as a transfer, just really, all the guys kind of gravitated towards him a lot. He's a, kind of a true leader in that sense, but he's one of those guys that's just, it's just like, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to go ahead and do it with like 110% effort. And we need that in our starting lineup. I think we got guys like Marcellus Avery coming off the bench that absolutely provide that as well for us. But he didn't have the best game against Kansas. But by the same token, like we've got these guys that are energy guys. Yeah, and we got these guys that are energy guys that certainly help out. And Shemari Allen is kind of like the leader of that, where he's just kind of like doing all the little things that really matter and help you out in winning games. And so, he's one of those guys from the beginning of the season that I'm really excited that he's on this team.
And he's a defensive juggernaut. I mean, a lot of the steals that you're seeing
on their best guard.
Yeah, you see those steals. It's Shemari Allen. He gets in the lanes. He has the ability. I think it was BYU. They were inbounding and trying to inbound over his head, and the BYU guy was
twice.
Like, he'll never get this, right? And his hops, you saw him just sky. It reminded me of CJ Walker, how he just has this uncanny ability to jump, and he just got vertical and broke up 2 of those passes and turned them into steals and turnovers.
Yeah.
So,
Josh, he's awesome.
I see you shaking your head a lot, and I want you guys to get your 2 cents in on them because this was, truly has been said, a historic win.
Well, when it comes to Kansas, I mean, as soon as Allen goes to the 1, and that actually was something I love seeing in the BYU game too. And then you get Johnson on the 2. It really is a different dynamic. And no one's really pressed them too hard, like really pressed them when it's Shemari at the 1 yet. We'll see what happens in the there, but I really love seeing that. And Diallo was just on fire. Like if you watched, let's just take the second half, right? And sometimes you just like seeing the fun stuff. Diallo's all over the place. I think multiple people said his like turnaround floater at like 9 to 10 feet, that that was kind of one of the pivotal pieces of that game, because it was just such a the run in the first half, to end it, but like it's just like this dagger that you feel like if you could hit that, what else can you do as an individual?
That was such a huge moment, right?
Oh,
it was a huge moment, because right before that, he altered a shot. It wasn't a block shot, but he altered a shot, and he got like a man's rebound. Like, he got a ridiculous rebound. And then, like you said, he had that floater over Dickinson on the very next play. It's like, I mean, that was a big moment in that second half. I agree with you, Josh.
The best game of his career by far. And one of the things Diallo
100%.
said, was when he was in Indiana, because he was a transfer, he played Dickinson, and this was his revenge game.
Well, it certainly looked like it. So no, that was in part of the text talk. I don't know if we'll get into it or we're just moving on, but part of what I was talking about when we were talking about the Kansas game specifically is the fact that this level of effort needs to be there every single game. And that's, I think, what put we slightly talked about it already, but what put me off on the what type of season will this be in the Big 12 is I'm seeing this team, you need to get it tighter down to like the 10s or something, and it's a bad start and it's on the road and you get all that. But to go from 8 to 18 at the end is the opposite of anything you want. And then it kind of felt like there was no fight after that. And, I've been competitive in some sports, competitive in bowling and other things. Bowling is the one sport I'm quite good at. But I've been there when I've gone about 5 or 6 strikes deep, and you're looking at the person you're playing, and they're shaking their head. They're trying to push themselves to try to get something like not a hanging 10-pin over and over again. Like, I've been there and put someone away in tournaments because of that. And I've been on the other side where I've been down like so far, like I need to strike out and the pressure is on and you just need the first one. And like the head pin wraps around at 7 or a 10 and you're just like, and that's that's what I saw there. So if it was like that the rest of the season, we're 0-3 and not 1-2. And it's not like we're the only ones 1-2. I think Houston is 1-2. Like big teams are 1-2. This conference is the deepest in the nation. And so translating that, you're like, what are we going to get? And Kansas was this great way to see what we can really do. And I know we'll get to BYU. I actually think a lot of that did continue on with some major differences because we got a lot of turnovers in Kansas, but BYU.
Well, I think the big thing. Well. I think the difference was we got a second half defensive effort. For Kansas, I think we got a whole defensive effort for BYU. I mean, keeping BYU at they average 80 points per game against really good competition. And having kept them to 63 points and under 30 points in the first half was just phenomenal. So that tells you what this defense is capable of.
Yes. Yeah. And I know we'll get into BYU. I was there, so I have a lot more on that. But for Kansas, it was just everything was amazing.
We'll talk about your attendance and our record correlation there in a little bit there. I blame you.
Yeah. I mean, you have Mike O'Donnell holding a shoe and getting viral on what
a viral moment that was.
Oh my God. You know what though? Mike O'Donnell, he it was good. And then the next day it was good. But then he did that 15-minute long, 30-minute long interview. And it's like, bro, we get it. And then he took it in the next game in the BYU. It's like, bro, I know it's 15 minutes of fame, not an hour and a half.
Listen,
it's time to put the shoe away.
He can still probably shoot more threes than anyone on this podcast.
I'll allow him to live that moment. It was a really the whole win was a big deal, and that adding to it with the court storming, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, all that was good. Johnny Dawkins getting memes with his.
Dude, that meme is fire. Like that's what I want from him. This is what I've been talking about. This is what I want from him when he
on the reg, but he's not
coaching. I want that animated crazy look, like tearing off whatever he's got going on. He's got it in him.
Court. No, he's not.
You're about to get me fired up again, Roger. I'm not.
I know, but that's what I want. It doesn't matter whether you think that right now. It doesn't matter if you feel that's the right thing. But that just shows me that he has it in him, and that's what I want from him on the sideline. Like I'm not saying like yell at everybody, yell.
Yes, you are.
Get fired up
because you don't know what's in the huddle, Roger. So you are saying that he should yell at everybody. Like you are saying that he should be like this animated guy all the time, and that's just all right. I'm going to be done talking about it.
I'll say this. How about this? So Kirk, since Ben, that's kind of your era. Kirk Spearaw. Wasn't the yeller, but there were times on the edge where feathers were ruffled. I don't think he was. He's not throwing cheer animated, and he's not throwing a jacket into the crowd animated.
No, but Kirk also got the crowd up, right? So like Ben, you used the story
a lot, You
and
anybody who thinks that Kirk couldn't yell was definitely played for him. That's for dang sure.
No, I know he could, but like I'm thinking like Indiana dude. I can't pull out my head throwing the chair.
Oh, Hoosiers guy, Bobby
Knight. Yeah, like I know Kirk isn't that, and I've seen Kirk get animated as a fan multiple times. So, and I'm sure Ben, you've experienced that too. But I maybe there's that in between where if Dawkins is firing up a crowd every so often, it's not loud enough. He waves his hands. Maybe a little of that, like Heupel did that once or twice when he was coach here, and it people didn't expect it.
He's got the crowds to do it. Right now, he's got the crowds to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Let me grab Alan here. Alan, I want to pop you on the screen. Like I said, this truly is a monumental win for UCF, and I want to make sure you have your say on that too.
Yeah, it was epic. Definitely, like Ben said, the biggest win in regular season history. And I mean, what sticks out to me is the defense for one. I mean, this was the second lowest scoring output for Kansas all season. They're averaging 78 points a game. We held them to 60. So it was just cool to see all around the defensive effort, the comeback from being behind. I think in a situation where you're down big to, number 3 team like that can be, at least from a fan perspective, looks like it's over. But for them to come back was just, like we've said all year, we wanted to see them show some fight. And that was really, really cool to see so early on in their Big 12 era, for them to come out in their second ever game and beat historic blue blood like Kansas was just really, I mean, I think one of the biggest wins in any UCF sport in history, regardless.
You're right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It was just, what a epic day for the program, for the school, the exposure, beating a team like that's, predicted to go far, was preseason number 1. My only other take on it is maybe it's controversial, maybe it's not. And Ben, maybe you could speak to this, but as impressive as the win was, is that a more like, I've seen UCF's crowd, like specifically comes to mind was I was in school when we played Memphis at home when Derrick Rose was on the team and we had Jermaine Taylor, and that building was just unbelievable. I mean, you could really feel the electricity in the air. I mean, it was like palpable when we were on a run there at the end of the first half again in that Memphis game. And there was like a alley-oop dunk and the crowd just went crazy. So I was kind of thinking to myself, it reminded me of that, is like how much of a product was of it the team, talent and playing well versus how much really did the crowd lift this. It felt like the crowd was a huge part of this game. Like they really kind of willed them to the win, not to take anything away from what the guys did, but is that something more that was just a product of kind of the crowd and kind of like an artificial thing that we're not really going to expect too much to, and I know we hung in there with BYU and everything, but going out on the road is a different story, as we saw against Kansas State. So how much of the crowd really willed them to that win? Because I've seen this UCF team when it's a full sold out stadium. To me, it's one of the best places to play in the country. It gets loud. It's scary for the opposition, and it makes it really hard on them, and they start to crack, which we saw with Kansas. So how much of that really was a product of the win, more so than, they just played a great game and great coaching decisions and defense and all that?
Yeah, I hate to hedge my bet there, Alan. I think it's a great question. I hate to hedge a little bit, but they definitely go hand in hand, right? Like, I mean, if you're in, luckily we don't have to go there this year unless I'm forgetting something about the schedule. But I mean, if you're in Allen Fieldhouse, I mean, that's just a different, the tide's turned in the other way. I mean, so the home crowd and the energy that Night Nation brought in that building, what certainly, I mean, I don't even want to say helped, because it doesn't give it enough justice to how much it kind of pushed that team over the edge. But how they go hand in hand, and I've already mentioned it already. Like, I think like the defensive moves that happened at the start of the second half, that move to go to that 3-2 matchup zone, like it allowed the team to like feel the crowd energy, because they're not chasing anybody around the court necessarily. They're just working like their area of the court and setting traps the best they can, getting in passing lanes the best they can. And that allows like the energy of the crowd to like stay in it. And that translates into the energy of the players. And like, so that's how it goes hand in hand to me, like specifically is it's not just kind of a cliche or kind of like hedging my bets on the answer. I think that it all plays into it. And I'll also agree in what you're saying, or what I believe you're saying is, this team has to show it on the road. I mean, obviously the toughest road test of the season, was at Kansas State, and it was a tough game to watch as a UCF fan. And I know that the players and the coaches certainly experienced a really, really tough game. And, Texas coming up this week is going to be no different. I mean, they get up, they pack their arena for the basketball games, just as well. They have a crazy fan base. And so going to Texas this week is going to be a huge test, coming off of the good performances that we saw this week. The excellent performance playing against Kansas, the solid performance playing against BYU, albeit, a tough shooting performance. But they're going to have to bring that type of energy, and they're going to have to use that within themselves coming up here in a couple of tough environments. And that's where we're really going to see what this team is made of. I agree with you there.
All right, let's get Trey's take real quick. Trey, anything you want to say? It's good.
The only game that I've watched this year was the Kansas game, so I might retire after that and just be like, listen, I'll watch when we get to the conference championship.
I think what that means is you've got to watch the rest of the games.
Yeah, exactly, because we lost BYU and you didn't watch.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I might need to start watching then. But I mean, beating a blue blood, like, I think it's one of like a top 5 victory in program just UCF history, just because what Kansas means to college basketball. Like, I'm not a big college basketball guy, but I understand like Kansas, UNC, Duke, like those kind of schools, that brand as far as basketball, like that is a huge win. That would be the equivalent, like you said, to beating Alabama or State in football. Like,
we did
to do that. Yeah, we have. But like to do that is monumental. I don't care if it's at home, on the road, like wherever. And it's similar to like when we played Duke in the tournament that year. Like, if we would have pulled that game out, like that was a monumental win. So to be able to do it for Kansas again, those are the kind of wins that like can catapult a program. Like because I reference back to the Fiesta Bowl year for me. That win against Baylor on that stage to me was like, wow, UCF can be something. I'm sure there are hundreds of kids, thousands of kids who, might not know much about it. They're like, wow, UCF beat Kansas. That could mean something. So, I mean, I think it's one of the bigger wins in the program's history. All
right, and we'll talk about that, about one of the biggest and potentially most impactful signings recently too, and that kind of ties into that.
Coincidence. It's coincidence,
It's a coinky dink. All right, Ben. Real briefly, we're coming up on 45 minutes here.
Right.
What have you got on BYU? Obviously, we didn't win that game. What was the big difference for you? What did you see out of this team that you didn't what didn't you see that you saw against Kansas?
Yeah, I think the main difference statistically, we don't need to go through all the statistics, but we obviously just didn't shoot well from the field, and we didn't shoot well, especially in the first half from the free throw line. I thought we were aggressive offensively. We were playing together better. We were just we actually moved the ball well. I thought it wasn't like Kansas State where we went to hero ball and kind of looked like frustrated one-on-one. We were actually moving the ball well on offense. We were having a good offensive performance, I thought. It's just that when it came time to even some layups, it might have been a little contested layups or whatever, but certainly wide open shots from three or whatever it may be, they just weren't falling. It was just one of those games.
29.3% shooting, and we still were. It was a 2-point game.
I think the reason why that was, Roger, is the reason why it was close with a top 20 team, right? Top 20 team, we shoot 30%, and it's a couple points from here or there. That is the difference in victory. I mean, the reason why that is because we, again, just played really well, really good defense overall, just solid defense. And we got an incredible performance from our big man in Ibrahim Diallo. I mean, he had 19 boards on the game. We
had 44 rebounds.
Yeah, and how many offensive rebounds, Roger?
17.
17. I mean, just 17 offensive rebounds. Diallo got 9 of them on his own. 9 offensive rebounds from a player is just phenomenal. And so I think that was the difference. We got some second chance points, second chance opportunities there. We really kind of were able to kind of slow down one of the most efficient offenses in college basketball. BYU, and this is part of the text talk too. I mean, BYU, I said it to you guys during the game. I was like, it's, as somebody who watches a lot of basketball, and particularly college basketball, it's like BYU's offense is just kind of like, it's kind of like, I don't have another word, but kind of beautiful to watch. It really is the way that they move the ball. Their big man, Ali Khalifa, I believe his name is. He leads the nation in assist to turnover ratio at 8.0 going into that game. He's a little bit less now because we actually held him to only 1 assist, and I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers. He had a great game, but we definitely helped. We definitely cooled him off in that area. He's kind of that Jokic type. If you follow the NBA, he's kind of like Jokic, where Jokic, where he's a phenomenal passer, and that's kind of But like I said last week, going into this game and kind of previewing it, 3 of the top 4 players in the Big 12 in assist to turnover ratio are on BYU. They're phenomenal at passing the ball, and I thought that our defense was the reason why we were in it, and we really played well and battled to the very end. It's just that cumulative over the course of the game, when you miss that many open shots and you miss that many free throw opportunities, it can be deflating for a team. And I didn't see that at all. I didn't see that at all from our team, and that's a credit to our players for sure. It's a credit to the crowd that stayed in it. I can't remember the last time I saw a 4 p.m. Saturday game at the UCF arena that was that packed. I mean, Josh can speak to that. He was there. But the energy came through the screen. Yeah, unfortunately for all of us, Josh was there. But the energy came through the screen, and credit to Night Nation, and I hope they keep that up because I think the crowd also helped us stay up and energized and continuing to fight. So
statistically, we should have won the game, right? If you look at the stats and you look at the stat line, this was a UCF win. So they did everything right. the shots just didn't fall. I mean, 3 for 18, 16% from three-point percentage. And that wasn't BYU's defense. That was just us missing shots. 29%, 17 for 58. We got 6 more shots than they did off, with those offensive rebounds. And more specifically, the last 10 seconds of the game, we played smart basketball.
Yes.
And we had the ability, we got them to the free throw line. The place was raucous. They missed shots, right? And I think a large part of that was who was shooting, obviously, but also the crowd being loud and getting in their heads, right? And then, and that wasn't Josh. That was everybody but Josh, because Josh did nothing.
I was hoarse after that game. So, I don't want any slander on my lack of. I'm the one yelling in 117.
All right,
none of that slander.
So Josh, I think it would have been just as loud without you there, and we might have won the game. But that goes back to his 0 for record when Josh is in attendance. So just as a reminder for everyone, if we lose, blame it on Josh. It's not Johnny Dawkins' fault. Put a Josh clause into his contract where Josh cannot be in the arena. All right. That being said, the original point was that last 10 seconds was phenomenal. We played it really, really well. We ended up with the ball in the last, I think it was like 3 to 5 seconds, where we had a shot, or actually it was like 10 seconds left, where we had long enough for us to hold the ball, pick our shot, and there was a non-called foul that was there, which I don't blame the refs all that much on, although there were kind of like 2 in a row, just simply because it's the end of the game. You don't want to decide the game, but clearly the strategy was to go to the paint, get a couple of foul shots off, and try to get the ball back when they inbounded, and it just didn't work out. But either way, this team in that game was not the same team that was K-State. And I'm okay with this loss because we know, one, they had an off night. It was still close. And they played well enough and they were in it to the final buzzer. So hats off. It may have been a loss. It may not have been a dub. And a win is always better than a loss. And this isn't a moral victory, but it gives me confidence going into Texas. Texas is good, but they're not, to me, Texas, having watched a couple of their games now on film, they're not Kansas quality. Let's just put it that way. They're beatable. And I'm not calling necessarily for the dub, but I am saying that we will be competitive, and they are playing at home, which is always more difficult on us. But if we play defense like we've been playing, and they're not too starstruck, I really think they were starstruck with that Kansas State game. They just came out like completely discombobulated.
In a very, very tough environment too. I mean, that's a tough environment to play in. But yeah, I hear you.
So I was going to say a couple of things. I'd love to go back to BYU, but we already steamrolled past that. I kind of disagree only because I think we can play well at home. That is obvious. I don't think they've proven yet they could do it on the road, and I hope we're proven wrong. But so they can work hard as a great team. They can beat great teams. They can play for full time. But can they do that on the road? And maybe staying in Texas is going to be good between the 2 games that they're playing in the state. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen on Wednesday. Because
I'll say this way to your point, and I for the sake of sounding positive, I'll say this way, or at the risk of sounding positive, I'll grab one of Johnny's quotes, which is defense travels. So they don't have to shoot. Usually when you're playing in a different arena, it's about your shooting being off. If we only make 29% of our shots and are still a 2-point game, I have a lot more confidence in the team's ability defensively to be able to travel and play well, because defense typically isn't as impacted as offense is by the crowd noise.
I'll say that with a one little caveat, because
asterisk,
little asterisk, because I agree with you. Defense definitely travels. It's that But what we've seen with Dawkins teams in the past is that if they're not hitting shots, then the defense starts to fall off a little bit, especially when you're on the road and you can't play off of that energy of the crowd to kind of keep you in it and keep you up. And so I'm hoping that if we do struggle for hopefully a short stretch, even a short stretch in the game, hopefully.
So does that mean, Ben, that there needs to be a little more energy from the sideline to keep them going and keep them up when those times go down?
Well, like I said, we're not going to get back into it. But,
I'm baiting you.
That does happen. That does happen where you feel a little deflated on the offensive end, and it translates over in the defensive end. That happens with a lot of teams, but we have seen that in the past. I mean, even the best UCF teams that we've seen over the last 8 years with Dawkins, we saw them when they struggled from the shooting performance on the road. Sometimes they get a little bit lackadaisical defensively. So I'm hoping that the defense travels in a better way, but we also can score points off of some of the turnovers that we force.
All right. So I guess we'll have to predict our Texas win or loss at the end. But let's go ahead and transition. And I want to put Trey front and center on this because he is our least basketball savvy person on the panel.
I know a little bit about NBA.
Yeah, college, but yeah. Well, we've learned that you need to.
That's not our target audience.
Yeah, you need to learn the BYU offense is what we've learned this week. To add it to the whatever one you were talking about before, and the triangle offense and the Princeton offense and whatever.
Josh
so
told me about the Princeton offense.
Yeah, so I think we're just going to have to add on, but wins beget wins, and there was another win for the program this week in the sense of a transfer player that came to UCF, and there may be another on the way. But no matter what, this is a huge win from a recruiting perspective because NBA players, fellow college basketball players, we talk about in football how that first halo type player that we get to commit recruits others. Big signing this week for Mikey Williams as he transfers to UCF from Memphis. Just a little bit of background for folks that don't know. He got into some legal issues while he was at Memphis, and then there was some back and forth on how Memphis handled that. He was, not cleared, but basically pleaded it down to a misdemeanor. And now he's at UCF, and went to bat to him for eligibility. Obviously, Johnny Dawkins, you've heard me say this on the show. You've heard others say this on the show. Johnny Dawkins is the guy that I want to raise my kids. I don't know if he's the guy that I want to, make an NBA career for a lottery pick. So this is good for UCF. This is good for our ability to recruit. What do you know about Mikey Williams, having not been a college basketball guy? And, because it seems like a lot of people know him through his 3 million social media presence.
Yep, that was actually going to be my text talk was when Josh had talked about how UCF's on the front page of ESPN again after our Kansas win, and it was because we had pulled in him as a recruit, and then it was like, yeah, he has 3 million followers, which that's just crazy for, he's 18, 19 years old with 3 million followers. Like, that's crazy, but it's because of how talented he was. I don't follow a lot of college basketball. My brother's really big into it. But I knew about Mikey Williams. Like, I knew about him coming out just because, again, about those kind of hyped guys every year. And he's athletic. He's extremely, extremely athletic. But yeah, I think it's huge because, again, I think he was a top 5 player coming out. In college, which, again, most of those guys like that come out top 5 college-wise, it's a little different than football because a lot goes into football physically, just getting acclimated to the college game. From what I see, those top 5 guys, it might take them a week or so to get acclimated, and a lot of them are lottery type of picks. Like, they come out, they're ready after a year. So that's just the kind of recruit that Mikey Williams that we're talking about. He's a potential, I'm assuming, lottery type of pick, one and done type of talent. A couple of legal issues and troubles. But hey, again, like you said, these kind of things are huge going forward, because if he plays well and he's recruiting a lot of the guys, I know there's another guy that my brother sent that's committed to UCF. I think he's another 5-star, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah, like these kind of things are huge, because as a player, at least from my perspective, I always wanted to go somewhere that, okay, these guys can put people in the NFL. I want to follow in the same footsteps. Like, it's easy to follow that same path when you see it. Luckily, we just had our first, lottery pick last year. So,
right.
So we have shown that we can do it, even just because of last year. And I think just getting more guys in, that's what draws talent. Again, I've always told people, once you get to Orlando, it sells itself. Like, UCF sells itself. You just have to get the guys here to see it, because it's very different than a lot of the blue bloods. And to me, especially the way NIL is going, social media, why not be in a place that you can brand it so much more? Like, I feel like UCF is up and coming in that sense. So yeah, I think it's huge. Hopefully when he can get here and perform, because I think just watching his little highlights when he was in high school, he's electric, man. He's probably, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, he probably might be one of, if not the most talented, just raw talented players to come through here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, especially at the point guard position. Just his athleticism, his overall offensive game is just kind of something that we haven't quite seen, especially at the point guard position. We've had some athletic point guards, there's no doubt about that, but guys that just have that kind of next level athleticism is something different. And he can shoot it from outside. He actually has, I think, part of his offensive game that is I wouldn't call it underrated necessarily, but people like to talk about his highlight reel dunks a lot more than his court vision. I think he has very good court vision, but also his ability to not only see the opening and how he's going to get the teammate the ball, but deliver the pass in the right way. Part of his highlight reels that I've been kind of refreshing myself on over the last few days since we signed him. Just seeing these kind of cross court, near 3/4 court bounce passes that he's, doing on the fast break to his teammates. So it's not just his athleticism, and something that Josh and I were kind of chatting about before we started recording tonight. I think that one of the things that he's probably got to show that he can really amplify in his game is the defensive side of the ball. But two things about him coming to UCF that I think are really positive for Mikey Williams. One, when you play for Coach Dawkins, you definitely have to play a high level of defense, and you have to step up your defensive game to fit into Dawkins' scheme. And I have no doubt that he'll be able to do that. And then secondly, I'll just say, and I think we all touched this who have talked about Mikey Williams so far. And this is something that I really said to a lot of my friends who texted me about this signing, is that I in a situation that he's currently in off the court, can't really think of too many coaches, and I know I'm biased, but I can't think of too many coaches or coaching staffs. That would be a better situation for him to kind of rebuild that character reputation that he needs to rebuild right now, kind of make sure that he stays on the straight and narrow. Having somebody like Johnny Dawkins and his staff, by the way, to be able to kind of guide him through that, I think is huge, and probably probably a big reason why he's here. So I'm excited with the signing for sure.
And I think just going to that, because I think that his teammates are going to have to help him with it. We all know the off-court issues. We know, he's gotten into some issues. It's no different than, one of my teammates, if they had any issues. You're going to have to help keep him on the straight and narrow, because, again, we play basketball, we play football, we do all of this, but it's such a small amount in the grand scheme of it. There's a lot of alone time. There's a lot of time that we can, I can't tell you how many times and opportunities that I could go find trouble in college if I wanted to find trouble.
Easily.
Like, it's very easy to go find it. So I think, again, like, yeah, Coach Dawkins and the staff, that's going to be important. But I think even more important possibly is his teammates, because Coach Dawkins isn't staying in the dorms with him. Coach Dawkins is, hanging out with him, going out. Coach Dawkins is making sure he gets to practice, making sure he gets to class. But all the in-between time, that's going to be, on the teammates. And again, I think if the culture's there, I can't speak to it. If the culture's there, he'll be fine, because I know Coach Dawkins is a hard-nosed, no BS kind of guy. But if the culture's there, he'll be fine. So I think, the guys that are coming in.
Trey, is Johnny Dawkins the basketball version of George O'Leary?
No. Coach O'Leary was a whole level, man. He was, but I always respected it, because that's what we were here for. My high school coach used to tell me, listen, you're going to college, get good grades, and play football. All the other stuff is Coach O'Leary. You don't want to do anything, blah, blah, blah. And Coach O'Leary stood by that. I remember he told our parents when they dropped us off as freshmen, he's like, I'm going to make sure your son gets a degree, make sure he has somewhere to sleep at night, and make sure he has food to eat. Those were the only guarantees he gave us. He said, I'm not
I love it.
that your son's going to play a snap for me. I'm not guaranteeing anything else. He said, those are the things I can guarantee. But I think just that mentality, it helps you. It either helps you or it breaks you immediately. Like, there's not really in between for me. So, I think that, Coach Dawkins is anything like that. I can't really speak to him. He was a lot nicer when I talked to him and what I've heard about him than what Coach O'Leary was. But I think it might be in a little bit of the same mold, the old school kind of mold.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great point about the teammates, though, Trey. I mean, it's, if you kind of got the culture set, like you're going to recruit to that culture. So, like, certainly I think the type of guys that we have on this team this year, and we've talked about it on this pod, that, it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of them are kind of here for only 1 year. But I think the culture or the players that we have and we have had throughout the last 8 years, I think reflect a very positive environment that's coming, that, because we recruit those type of guys.
And I mean, it helps because, like, I remember going on all the, the official visits where, these parents are bringing their 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, and I'm 21. The parents, most of the time, the first people they talk to are the players. They want to be like, hey, how are you going to take care of my son? How are you going to watch out for my son? Like, I remember recruiting Richie Grant, like him coming in with his parents. That was one of the things they asked me. Like, how are you going to keep Richie out of trouble? Richie likes, like, they're very open and they want to know, like, how can you protect my son? Because I'm letting him go from my care to, Coach Frost and then to the players. And we're like, listen, this is how we take care of them. We do this, that, and the third. So, like, I think that aspect is huge. Because again, I went through it. I know all the things you can do in Orlando that are great. I know all the things in Orlando that can get you in trouble in a split second. Mm-hmm. So, and I think, just having a good group of guys around you keeps you out of those situations, or having a bad group can lead you to those situations.
And people don't realize just how, it sounds so obvious, but people don't realize just how, like, off the field, off the court, like, you're always with your teammates. Like, you just always are. Like, I mean, it's just your schedules all line up. You're hanging out, like, you're always hanging out with your teammates. And it's like, you rarely have a whole lot of, like, solid relationships outside of your team. As far as just it is truly a brotherhood, and I hope that, Mike, you find some good, that true brotherhood here.
Yep.
All right, Alan, what are your thoughts? Our social media king here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great pickup. I mean, I obviously he hasn't played a single, minute of college basketball yet. So obviously we don't know, if the hype has translated. To be honest with you, I had not heard of him prior to signing. I know then, obviously ESPN and a bunch of big outlets talked about it. So, as you tend to doom scroll and look at some of the comments, you saw a lot of people that kind of asked, how does he have so many followers? It's not like he's, LeBron James' son or something like that. And I saw a lot of people said that his freak athleticism was very apparent when he was, like, very young, 13, 14. Yeah. But as he I guess as he got older and other kids his age started to kind of make that look a little bit less special because people caught up to him. So, I mean, I guess he was a 5-star recruit, so he must still, have kept, whatever magic he had there. But I guess I'm just curious to see, does he end up playing? Because, obviously in today's era with the transfer portal, is he using us to, maybe get, back in the good graces of college basketball recruiting? Because if he's not going to play this year, then he's got to sit out the rest of the year. And then you go through the off season and maybe with his image rehabilitated, he tries to go somewhere else. I'm just curious and I don't know if those are his intentions or anything. I'm just be interested to see if he actually will end up staying at UCF with just the pull of the portal being there, and who knows, getting a big NIL offer. But I mean, on paper, it's great.
It's really up to the academic side because part of his agreement was that it is a misdemeanor if he stays out of trouble until August. So the question is, will they, from the student conduct side and the academic and the university side, will they allow him to play early or not? Because that's still an internal risk. Because if something does happen, then there's going to be a lot of egg on the face of UCF, especially if he, doesn't follow through on the agreement, and it turns into a situation where he doesn't end up with that misdemeanor and something else happens. Then there's other repercussions for what he did in the state of California where he's from. That's going to be the biggest question.
So I guess we'll see what happens.
That goes to, I think that just goes to, again, what me and Ben are talking about. Like, if all he has to do is not get in trouble, or I don't know the exacts, but if it's just, keep your nose down, stay under the radar, don't get in trouble. The easiest way to do that is to lean on your teammates, lean on your coaches, play basketball, man. You're in the gym, man. Listen, just go play basketball all day, go back to the dorms, watch some TV, hang out with the boys.
My suggestion is shoot free throws.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, just the one thing that I know just from football is the better your teams are, the more scouts are going to come watch you. So not only are they going to come watch Mikey, of course they're going to come watch, just in the future. They're going to come watch everybody else. You don't just come and watch one guy on the basketball court and not notice somebody else. So I think just even for the betterment of them, just look out for the kid. I mean, he's going to be your little brother, your younger brother. And just watch out for him for not only, because he could be a great player and help us get to where you want to get, in the NCAA tournament and make a run. He's going to be a key part, I'm assuming. But he can help you get to where you'd want to go, So I think just the overall, that's what he's going to have to do is just lean on his teammates. Teammates got to welcome him in and, lean on him and watch his back.
All right, Josh Lazar, real briefly.
Sure. So Mikey, I saw him at the game because he was about 10 seats away from where I sit, or darn near close. He had I think a manager. It might have been a bodyguard, not sure. But I thought I saw him talk about being a manager or helping him with taking pictures of people. And he seemed to be really nice and good with the fans. And a lot of young people know who he is. So I think this is all great. And to the point of keeping out of trouble, I think there is someone who is going to be at his hip for a while to make sure he's out of trouble. And I saw that at the game too. So I hope the best for him as just a person, because going to Alan's point, like he actually got, to where he is as a mixture, from what I've read, is a mixture of family working with him, getting on to Bronny James's team, playing against him, possibly being the better player at those games against him and with him. So actually, LeBron James and Bronny actually have some pieces to that, but. He had a view that he had a behind the back dunk that looked effortless that got like 310 million views on TikTok, and he has a lot of following because he has a lot of potential. So I'm really hoping that like that positive, people taking pictures, good interactions, people smiling, basketball team support was around him there too, goes well. He enrolls, he does well. He's surrounded by people that will build him up, and he just does well because I couldn't imagine being 19 years old and having a 3-year-old contract with Puma, right? When you were like 15, 16, like it's the man has everything ahead of himself. In one of his quotes, he wanted to be a billionaire by 25. Well, there's an easy way to do that, inclusive of what you're doing online and in social. That is absolutely dominate in a Big 12 with the team that is supposed to be at the bottom of the conference, with air quotes, and ball out and be a lottery pick, because you could do it on the social side and a team will pay you money. If you could do what some of these other guys from the Big 12 have done, you'll get paid. So I wish him the best, and I hope he does well, because he has the opportunity to do so.
Awesome. Yep. Biggest thing there's a lot of upside for UCF. There's a lot of upside for him. And I hope he does ball out, because if he balls out, we may only see him for a year. And I do feel he can make it popular. We were talking about coaches attracting people, but he can make it popular for people to come to UCF. So the LeBron effect in a different way. All right, let's go ahead and transition out of basketball. We're going to talk a little teeny bit about football, and then Trey and Josh have some football experiences for us that we're going to share. So for UCF Football Talk, the first thing I kind of wanted to mention is the Roths. For those of you who are not familiar, you should be. The name adorns our facilities. The Roths have been a big UCF booster for over 40 years. They truly, for a long time there, UCF football, there was a time when we were going to disband the football program. And, we needed big time boosters, and the Roths have been there over and over and over again, whether it be the Lazy River, whether it be the Roth Nutrition Center, whether it be any number of things. They have been by far our biggest donors, and they've stepped up again. So I just wanted to shout that out. Make sure, if you're on any social media platforms, the Roths are on there, and make sure you give them a thank you, because we're not just talking about, 100,000, 200,000. We're talking about, anywhere between $1 and $9 million donation that the Roth family has given, in addition to the $5 million that they've given before in other gifts that they've given to the program. So I just wanted to take a moment and appreciate the Roths for what they've done. They didn't disclose, and the reason I don't put a specific number in there is they didn't disclose the amount, but the terminology used was program changing. And we recently had a $5 million donation. So I'm going to assume this is going to be in excess of $5 million. And for a program like UCF, that is program changing money, because we just don't have the boosters yet that have that kind of money to throw at it. So thank you to the Roth family. We appreciate you, and make sure you give them a shout out if you can. Next, I kind of want to run through. Now, we're not going to do the detailed. I promised everyone, we had Brandon on. He kind of gave us some recruiting insights. We still weren't finished with signing. That's now done. I want to, or finished, because a cookie's done, but signing day is finished for the grammar police out there. I do want to run through who has officially signed. And then in a subsequent episode in the next week or two, we will actually go through and dissect each one of these players, watch the film, watch their huddle tape, and tell you what we see for each of these players. So I'm just going to run through that real quick. As far as high school signees, Kylan Fox, 4-star out of Loganville, Georgia. He's a tight end. Very excited about him. Walt Claire Flynn Jr., also out of Loganville, Georgia. He came with Kylan, 4-star offensive lineman, and there's a lot of noise around him. So think about this as, last year we got John Walker. This is the O-lineman version of John Walker. Jacob Good from Langston Hughes, Fairborn, Georgia. And these ratings are from 247, so they're a little bit, I think, more conservative than what the others are. He's an 89 3-star. He's 5'11" and a half and 180 pounds. Defensive player. Then we've got Bradell Richardson. You heard us talk about him quite a bit. He's out of Carrollwood, Tampa Bay area. Very, very, very good receiver. So excited to have him. Kason Stokes out of Armwood. I don't know if you guys remember this, but we were trying to get into Armwood forever.
That's old.
Huge, huge for us to get into there. Marcus Downs and Bradell's a wide receiver. Kason's a wide receiver. Jacob's a safety. We really upgraded the defensive backs through the high school and the transfer portal. Marcus Downs from South Carolina, defensive lineman, 6'6", 285. That's a good sized defensive lineman coming out of high school. Christian Peterson, another exciting name, safety out of Atlanta, Georgia. Riley Trujillo, which everyone should know at this point. QB, 6'3", 215 pounds. Really excited because he's 18 years old and 6'3", 215 as a QB. That's a prototypical size, and I've watched some film on him throwing the ball, and he's got a really, really good release. So I'm excited to talk about him. I know KJ Jefferson was the big news for this year. Obviously, EJ Colson also, but Riley's a really good player. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Chasen Johnson, a cornerback out of Seminole. Glad to keep that Seminole pipeline going. And then Rockledge has been another football factory that we've had a really, really hard time getting into. And we got Derek McCormick. He's a linebacker, 6'1", 195. Good size for a high school linebacker. He will definitely put on some weight. So I expect him to be around 215 pounds. And then Jordan Bridgewater out of West Orange, another wide receiver that's pretty highly touted as well. So those are the guys that are actually enrolled. So 11 of our players are enrolled at UCF right now in the weight program, doing all the things that we need to do. So that's really exciting. As far as the letter of intent and signing those, 4-star Frankie Arthur out of Oak Ridge, and not our Oak Ridge in Orlando, Texas, 5'10", 190, 4-star, really, really good running back. Jaylin Hayward out of Rockledge, cornerback. He was one of our highest rated players, defensive players. I don't know why 247 has him at 3 stars, because he really
is. Composite's a 4-score though. As a 4-star.
A lot of these guys are composites.
There's 8 4-star composites. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a cornerback. You've got Qua Birdsong, a linebacker, 6'2", 195. Again, good size. He's out of LaGrange, Georgia. He was a big get. And he's also been a very vocal, as well as Jaylin, very vocal for signing not only 2024, but 2025 guys. Stacy Gage out of St. Thomas Aquinas out of Fort Lauderdale. It was another school that we've been trying forever to get a solid pipeline going. Running back, he's going to be really good. EJ Colson, we talked about, he reclassified. He's out of Ellenwood, Georgia, 2-time state of Georgia high school participant in the championship. Won those championships. Has been, in the way that he's been talked about in how he puts teams on his back, very much like Mackenzie Milton from that perspective, in that he will carry teams if he needs to. Jashad Presley, and he's rated as a 3-star on 247, but he would be rated higher if he had come out next year, because he was supposed to be a 2025. Jashad Presley, safety out of Dr. Phillips in Orlando.
DP, that's my alum. I'm alum of DP.
Yep.
That's where I went.
we won't repeat what he just said. Chase Malamalala, the Benjamin School, North Palm Beach. He's an offensive tackle, 6'6", 300 pounds. people are excited about him. He may also be an option at center for us. And then transfers. This one was new. He was rated a 92.4 out of high school, 88 on the transfer. Safety Ladarius Tennyson, which is interesting because he played linebacker at Ole Miss, and he was a starter for Ole Miss on that really solid defense. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. A lot of these guys are safety, but we have night nickel positions that they'll be floating around. Zee Alexander, 6'2", 215 linebacker. He is from the Vandals of Idaho, which is interesting. He was a 3-star, but very, very solid player. Goldie Lawrence, that name should be familiar. We talked about him last week. He came from FSU. He was very highly touted last year. We thought we had him. He ended up going to FSU. Well, he's transferring back to us. Xavier Carter, 6'4", 210 pounds, linebacker. Again, good size linebacker. He's from UNLV. I believe he's only got 1 year. Wes Dorsey from Western Kentucky. I guess we're starting a Western Kentucky transfer pipeline here. He's an offensive tackle, 6'7", 315 pounds. I believe he was an All-American as well. Antoine Jackson, cornerback, 6'1", 175 from ECU. So we're starting that ECU pipeline too. He was actually a 4-star out of high school as well. So excited to have him. Josiah Pierre, 6'2", 240-pound linebacker. I'm really excited about him. He's a Texas Tech transfer, so played in the Big 12, 6'2", 240 pounds, prototypical size. Deshaun Pace, we've talked about him from Cincinnati. He's listed as a safety, 6'2", 212. He also played linebacker. So this gives us the ability to have a lot of different looks and be more dynamic on defense than what we've had in the past. KJ Jefferson, we talked about him from Arkansas. Dalen Dotson, he is an edge rusher, 6'3", 255 pounds. Pretty good size on him. So excited about that. He's from UT Martin, of all places. Miles Montgomery, another Cincinnati transfer. He was highly touted running back that we saw last year and was very, very good. Evan Morris from Michigan State. He's a tight end, 6'5", 205. I think this is his last year. Reese Adkins from Eastern Kentucky. He's another tight end, 6'6", 250 pounds. I've got to dig into some of these other guys from some of these smaller schools. And Byron Threats, you should be very familiar with him because he got thrown out of the game against us when we played this year, 5'10", 195. Again, those three players were Luke Fickell guys who played on those playoff teams. So these are experienced guys that have, that are really, really good defensively. And then last but not least, Jabari Brooks. He's 6'3", 335 out of Samford, interior offensive lineman. So that's who we have now, and they're not done yet. Overall, the transfer class is ranked as number 21, and the composite rank is number 34 for all of those players, transfers and high school. And it's a really, really solid class. Alan, if you want to add anything in here as well, just your overall thoughts before we really dig into this class this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was, by far the best signing class we've ever had on paper. It was super impressive to see, what we did in our first year entering the Big 12. I know that we're in the state of Florida and we have a little bit of a built-in advantage there, and we're in the Big 12 now. But if you look at the other three teams that joined us, they all, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, they ranked 51 through 60. So, just because we joined the Big 12 doesn't mean you're guaranteed in your first year to have that big of a jump in your recruiting rankings. And we did. We had a top 30 class by most metrics, by most platforms. Not only that, I thought it was super impressive. The recruits that we landed, 8 blue chip guys that had offers essentially from every team in the country, every major program in the country. And we're keeping, we moved away from Florida when we hired Josh Heupel. And then Gus Malzahn has really focused on Florida and Georgia, and he's bringing in guys. I mean, you mentioned some of the schools, Roger. And when you talk about St. Thomas Aquinas, they're the number 4 ranked team in the state of Florida this year. You talk about Carrollwood Day, they're a great program in Tampa.
Consistent.
Armwood, you mentioned them. I mean, the only recruit I can remember from there is Kyle Gibson. Bartram Trail in Jacksonville. I mean, these are some blue blood high school programs. I mean, even some of the ones in Georgia, Loganville, Grayson High. I mean, Grayson High was the top 7A team in Georgia this year. So when you look at these guys that we're getting, these are real players that could have gone anywhere in the country. They all rank, for the most part, top 100 in their state, top 50 at their position. So it was really impressive. I think this is one of the biggest moments recruiting-wise in UCF football history, if not ever. And I think their staff did an amazing job with balancing out. I mean, we had 10 offensive guys, 8 defensive guys. They really shored up some needs. I think wide receiver was a really big need. We were able to grab 3 receivers, which was the second most position that we got. And then we had 5 DBs that we got, which was another position we needed to get some youth in there, which was our most recruited position. And, the only position they didn't get was defensive end. They landed at least one player at every other position on the roster. So I thought this was really, really good to see. And not only that, they kept the guys there. I mean, you could have had guys flip. They only had one guy flip, the wide receiver that flipped to West Virginia. Otherwise, they kept 18 of 19, in-house.
Day Farmer.
Yeah, Day Farmer, who switched over to West Virginia last second. But everyone else stayed and signed their letter of intent. And that built on top. And then on top of that, you build that transfer class that you went through, who has 15 guys already, some guys that have some great experience, a guy like Tennyson, who you mentioned, and Alexander. They did a great mix there of taking guys that have 3 to 4 years of experience that can play right away. But then you have a guy like Zaire Alexander, who has 3 years of eligibility, but he led Idaho in tackles last year. I mean, he played. I mean, this is a guy with experience, not someone like Goldie Lawrence, for example, didn't really play at all last year. There was only a couple of those guys. Most of these guys either been playing for 3-4 years, or they're freshmen that played a lot in their freshman year and have a ton of eligibility left. So I think what they did is really build for the now, with a guy like KJ Jefferson, and built for the future with these high school recruits. So I'm really impressed by it. And I think it's going to go a long way into building that depth that we saw we were kind of missing this year. And they really secured a lot of positions of need and had great balance across all positions in the class.
Yeah, and that was on top of last year's class, which was a pretty good class and the best ever UCF class. Now we've got another best ever UCF class, and the 2025 guys that we have looking at us. I mean, we had recruits over the past weekend at UCF that were 2025 and 2026 guys. So Gus is not recruiting necessarily for today. He's also recruiting for tomorrow, and they're not taking any days off when it comes to recruiting. So I feel like, to your point, Alan, depth I think is important. I think we need a few more linebackers, and we do need some defensive ends, which will have another shot in the transfer portal coming up. But very, very solid class, and I can't wait to really dig into the film and look at the huddle. Although it's never fun watching high school tape because you have to like find the guy and make sure you're watching it, and of course it's when you're looking at the tape, you're looking at a lot of these guys are just physical specimens now that we're talking about 4 stars and 5 stars. In the past, 3 stars and 2 stars, are kind of built into that 4-star prototype over a couple of years. These guys are physically dominating in the high school levels because of their physical prowess and their like FSU does, War Chan approved, because they're larger guys, and that's why they're 4- and 5-star recruits. So
that's the impressive part to me too, is just the size of these guys. I mean, you look at a class from like 2016, 2017, guys like Mackenzie Milton and Adrian Killens were obviously amazing. But I mean, you look at some of these guys and they're already over 300 pounds. They're 285, they're 290. I mean, you have
at 18,
wide receivers. What was that?
At 17, 18 years old.
Exactly. And they're not even in a college weight room yet. So, I mean, for them to already be like this. I mean, it just shows the increase in recruiting that we've been able to accomplish under Malzahn and by entering the Power Five. So, I mean, some of these guys look like they're college ready when you look at like Richardson and you look at Frankie Arthur and Jalen Hayward and Stacey Gage. I mean, some of these guys look like they could play right now for the team. So it'll be really interesting to see. You know, we got 3 or 4 freshmen on the field already this past season. I think that number could be surpassed next season.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the Hula Bowl. We had lots of UCF participants in the Hula Bowl. Obviously, it was played on campus. It looked full when I drove by. During the Hula Bowl, I drove through campus, and all the parking lots around the stadium were full. The softball lot was full, a few other places. So it drew some attention. We had JRP play. He was dropping some dimes out there. There was, of course, just to keep in tradition for JRP, there was a couple of drop passes that were dimes, but I think he looked pretty good out there for his time. Jason Johnson named defensive MVP. Surprise, surprise. One of our star linebackers at the Hula Bowl. I think it should be mentioned that JRP is also playing in the Senior Bowl. So if you guys would like, JRP's doing everything that he can to get tape and get in front of NFL coaches. A lot of this, these games are not just about people watching it on TV, but it's an opportunity for these players to get in front of NFL coaches, get coaching from them on a one-on-one basis to get ready for things like their pro days or if they get invited to the draft, et cetera. And it's also an opportunity to get in front of scouts. So, JRP taking advantage of 2 different opportunities to do that. So make sure you check him out there. I felt like he did pretty good, in this opportunity. And Jason Johnson obviously stood out. Although his helmet choice for JRP, I know you played at Ole Miss, but bro, do you really got to put both of them on your helmet? I mean, come on, bro. Come on, JRP. All right. The other thing that's exciting for UCF fans, or should be, is, we were talking a little bit about the Roths and what they contributed. And we also have been talking a lot about the stadium plans and the athletic village plans and how those are all in place. If you happen to drive through UCF, soon you should start to see dirt being moved on the practice fields as the practice fields get moved. Now that the Hula Bowl is over, the expectation is shovels and dirts, and that's the first step to realigning everything to start the other projects that we have in the pipeline for UCF football. So that's exciting to see. For some draft possibilities, obviously Javon Baker, as we've mentioned, has now moved on. He's going to, put his name in the hat. Tylen Grable, Jason Johnson, Tremont Morris-Brash. Tremont Morris-Brash finished second, I think, in the country in tackles for a loss. He's going to get a lot of eyeballs. Wish him well. He stuck with the program. Not everybody does that. And he had some off years, and he stuck it out. And I feel like he really showed out in the Big 12. And I expect him to be, have an opportunity in the NFL. So all that being said, part of this process is the Pro Day experience. And for this week's student re-education, I'd like to bring in Trey Neal to tell us a little bit about his Pro Day experience, what that was like leading up to it, after the season's over, what happens, you got agents you got to talk to, you got to go train, you got to go through the experience, what are your interactions with the NFL folks, what happens in between that time and draft day, that sort of thing. So obviously Trey Neal did not get drafted, unfortunately. But he says all the time he wasn't good enough, but I don't know. He did have the full experience. I'd like for him to share a little bit of what our guys are going to be going through so you get an inside view of that. So Trey, take it away.
Yeah, so really the Pro Day experience, that whole thing starts probably after the conference championship week. For a lot of guys, like JRP, a lot of them, this is their last year. They knew it was their last year. I don't know if they had any more eligibility. If you do, so you submit your name and you have to fill out a lot for like the draft portal, and they send you a grade back. I know we've talked a lot about, what your draft grades or some of the guys' grades. It's kind of a gauge of where they go and talk to like the NFL, the big NFL guys, the scouts who do this every day. They go from, the southernmost part of Florida to the most north part of the country to the farthest west. They cover the entire country, and sometimes out of the country. But you kind of get your draft grade. If you should come back, should you not come back. They give you that advice. After that, it's up.
Hold on, Trey. What was your draft grade?
So the way they do it, it's first round grade, second round grade, third round grade, fourth round grade, and then it's just go back to school. That's what it's yeah. So I remember after my junior year, Coach Frost made everybody, like all the guys that played a lot, to do it, just because, again, he's like, I don't want to hold anything away from you. I want you to see what they're saying, and then you make the decision after that. I can tell you what I think, but I want you to see it for yourself. So that's where a lot of guys come back. A lot of guys leave. So mine was come back to school, obviously. Yeah, so then you figure that out. After that is where I think there's a window where you can kind of, after the season, talk to agents, kind of figure out what you're going to do. They start, some people sign, some people wait till they're completely done. And yeah, so you go from there. And then after that, your agent aligns you up with, who you want to train with. There's a budget. It's very business-like. There's a budget. There is a, you get this amount of money we can spend on doing this training, this place, car, blah, 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 everything. Your agent takes care of you. If you have a good agency, I did. His name was Josh Apple. It was based out of North Carolina. So I trained up there with Desmond Scott Performance, and a little bit about the day-to-day stuff. I mean, you're training like a professional. I didn't have a chef, but I got put on a strict diet. It was very low carb because they wanted me to gain weight, just a little bit about it. They were telling me they wanted me to play more of a dime back or special teams kind of guy. I'm like, okay, I'm not fast enough for safety, because believe it or not, they care about how fast you are. They care about all of that. That's why they put so much weight into it, because there's an athletic threshold you have to meet to play in the NFL. That's why I say I wasn't good enough to play in the NFL. I think I had the skills, the footwork, the hands, the knowledge of the game, but there is a athletic threshold to enter the door. Mm-hmm. And that's where I say I wasn't good enough. I was good enough for college. But to get into I don't know if it's the same for you, Ben, like the NBA, you can be a great anything, but there's a athletic threshold from college to the NBA. Right. Same thing with football. But yeah, going into it, they told me
just a minute, Trey, your hands were too small.
No, my hands were my wingspan, all of that was good. I mean, I had the measurables. It was just the speed was really my thing. And yeah, but I mean, that's what I trained twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. Now, these workouts aren't 2.5-hour workouts like the Coach O'Leary workout. These are very specific, very detailed training. So sometimes it'd be a 15-20 minute workout where I'm just working on starts. It'd be a 45-minute lift where I'm just working power clean. Like, it's very short, but very training specific.
So do you have to pay that money back for the training if you don't get drafted?
So it's different for everybody. Some people's contracts are contingent on where you're drafted. Some people's contracts are contingent on how much money you get signing. Like, it's very detailed. I didn't have to. My agent was like, listen, I believe in you, blah, blah, blah. So he took that risk, and sadly I didn't come through for him. But I mean, he signed some other big name guys too, so it's not like he's hurting for any cash. Yeah, it just depends on what you sign. And I think, going back, I wish there was like a class that I took, a little bit more knowledge about what I was getting into as far as that business side. That's like one of the big business things that I kind of preach, like with NIL. The kids need to know, like, yeah, you're getting all this money, but what is as far as taxes? Like, I don't know it, but what's as far as taxes? You have to pay money back. If you transfer, you have to pay money. Like, these are huge things that I didn't know, that even like when I was signed with my agent, like there were clauses in there. Like, I have to pay a certain percentage if I make practice squad. I have to pay them a certain percentage if I make active roster for a certain amount. Like, it's a lot of stuff that, I'm not an accounting major or a finance major. I don't know. So like, I had my grandpa kind of talk me through it. But yeah, like that's pretty much the pro day experience. It's just a nonstop grind every day.
So GPAW, when in doubt, ask GPAW. So, so you made it through. You trained, whatever. All right, take me through to the day. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Like, how much interaction do you have with the scouts and with, all of that? Do you get interviewed? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of get a feel of who's going to be there earlier. So I had a good relationship with our coaches, with Coach Fisher and Coach Beck. They talk to the scouts all year throughout the year. We can't talk to them, but they talk to them because they come to practice this, that, and the third. So we knew that we'd have a full class with all the teams there. We had some guys that were highly rated guys. They didn't get drafted, but they were like priority free agents. So we had everybody there coming to watch. I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking because it's not football that you're doing. It's a lot of picking and prodding, like almost like a doctor's appointment. Like I remember when they were taking our measurements, like a lot of the guys' measurements that they put listed on the websites, 99% of the time, there's a couple of inches that they have added. There's about 10, 15 pounds added. Because I think I was 6'2". Out of recruiting when I was in high school, I was listed at 6'3". When I officially measured, I was 6'1 3/8. I mean, they stuck the exact pin all the way through my hair, and it touched the top of my head, and then gave an exact measurement. So it's a lot of poking and prodding. You do your hand, wingspan, you do a vertical, and then after that, it's just performing. It's no, I didn't. That was my high school coach. But yeah, after that, it's just performance. You do a lot of, you do the vert, you do the bench, you do the 40, you do the shuttle, you do so much, and it's just.
I mean, when you're going through it, do you have time to be nervous, or is it just bam, bam, bam?
It's bam, 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 because while you're training for pro day, you are practicing this routine religiously. Like while you're practicing, okay, you do this first. Before you run your 40, you need to start doing this training, do these things to warm your muscles up. While you're in your downtime, you do this to warm your muscles up. So it's a lot. So you really don't have time to be nervous in a sense. You're more so nervous because like this is it. This is the last audition in a sense. Because after this, it's, you get flown out or they come to you and they work you out. That's easy. But because you don't really run any more 40s after that. You're training all off season for 6 to 8 weeks, pretty much just to run a great 40, jump a high vertical, and bench as much as you can. Because after that, post pro day, you have workouts. Like I worked out with the Patriots, I worked out with the Dolphins, the Falcons. There's no more.
You flew out there and they worked you out?
Well, so the Falcons, I was already in Atlanta at the time, so I went up to their facility. They came to me. Miami, I flew down. New England, they came down. So yeah, and they work you out. I mean, they work you out. It's nothing it's nothing about jumping or running a 40. It's football. It's backpedaling, doing this. And every time I did it, I was the only one except in Atlanta. It was more than one guy.
Was there big differences between those three teams that you as far as did something stood out that was this was way different than the other ones that I ever
So the New England one was probably the hardest one to me. I feel like they weren't even really trying to see if I could play football. They knew I could play. They just wanted to see because it was more so pro day was early March. They worked me out early April, so a month. I think they just wanted to see if I was still in shape, staying on top of it. Did I just work out and just get the big head and just sit down, or did I stay in shape? So that was the hardest one just because they were just trying to see if I was in shape. And again, I after I did pro day, I went back to Desmond, who's my trainer, and we stayed on it because he's like, listen, a team's going to come work you out just to see if you're in shape. And New England happened to be that one, and they worked me out hard. But I was in shape.
So how much?
I've heard stories where I remember Coach Fish told me those are the kind of things that, because the NFL is they know everything. If you kind of work out bad for the Patriots, at the time was Belichick's name, and he was a big guy, everybody knows about it, and everybody, you kind of get a bad taste. But if you do well, then it's just expected. So
right. So did they go through a lot of X's and O's with you, like Blackboard, to test your football knowledge? And then tell me about the Wonderlic test. Did you take it, and was it difficult?
So I didn't take the Wonderlic. That's mostly what people do at the combine. Well, actually, now I think guys are starting to do it more just outside. At the time, it was just a combine thing. But X's and O's, they got me on the board. That's actually probably one of my better skills. Is I can articulate a lot of what I see. I can articulate it well and easy. So I mean, I always blew them away just as far as talking football. So that was easy. Again, my only thing issue that was my downfall was just the athletic requirements. I was a good athlete, but to be in the NFL, you can't even be a great athlete. You have to be an elite. You're a 1% of the 1%. Yeah. 99% of those guys are that kind of athlete. And we kind of get
that much though. You had to just felt like you were in like the best shape of your. I mean, once it flipped to like being your job, like you're training for a living, like you're training for the opportunity for a living, I guess. You had to look back at that time and just how you physically felt as an athlete. It had to be crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did, because we do these combine tests a lot when we were at UCF, but we're not necessarily training for these combine tests.
Right.
We trained for them. So I think at UCF, the most I ever benched 225 was like 11 or 12 times, which that's good. But I think pro day, the day before I went to pro day, or we had like a mock pro day, I hit 225 19 times. But that was all I was doing as far as working out. Like I was trying to get that correctly. I think I was at 8% body fat. That's the lowest body fat I ever was.
That's lower than I was. 12% was my lowest.
Yeah, I mean, that was the lowest I was before I first got to campus, and I was, 6'1", 160 soaking wet. Like, I had no body fat, so, like, I think I weighed in the pro day I was like 220 at 8% body fat. So, like, I was shredded. Like, I was shredded. Like, best shape of my life. Strong, flexible. Like, that was my...
And then you got married, and it just goes...
Yeah. but I mean, like, so that's kind of the everyday thing, and it's not hard, because again, this is what you've been working for your whole life to get to this moment to where you can just be a professional athlete. But again, there's an athletic entrance that you just have to check it off. So I think, kind of as we transition to the guys that are coming in, the guys that are going to be doing it, a lot of them, they're a lot more athletic than me, so I think they're going to have a good shot. Where they get drafted and, how prioritized they are if they're not as free agents, it's going to be crucial on how they test, because we know that these guys are good football players. We know that Trayvon Morris-Brass is a good football player. I truthfully think it's just going to be, the measurables. Does he run fast? JRP is a great football player. What is he going to test in? Because I could see him getting maybe a Taysom Hill kind of role. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him on the Saints, where he's just kind of a gadget quarterback. Like I think, and he's been in the NFL for 8 years, just being a gadget quarterback, come in, run some runs, throw a little bit. He could play tight end, receiver, like just a do-it-all guy. There's space for them. And then Javon Baker, I think he has all the skills, but I want to know how he tests, because if he goes out there, I promise you, if he goes to the combine, I think he's going to the combine.
He got an invite.
Yeah, so if he goes out there and pops a 4.4, he's going to skyrocket up some boards, because he has the skills. But
as long as Javon, the one thing with Javon that gets me is his confidence in himself going to put him in a position where he doesn't put in the work that he needs to really stand out the way that he could?
Oh, he's going to have to, because I'm telling you, this class, one of the reasons I thought he was going to come back was because this wide receiver class is
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I mean, this class is being talked about like, if you need a receiver in the NFL, this is the class to get one. I mean, there's going to be guys who make plays that are going to fall to the second round, third round. I know there's a kid out of LSU who's a freak who's probably going to fall into the second or third round. So for him, it's going to be, can he run fast? Because he's not the biggest guy. He's a big guy. I think he's like 6'1", 6'1.5", 6'2". He's not like, 225 or anything. He's a nicely built guy. He's going to have to do something to separate himself. And I think when you're training, the easiest way to show it is to run fast. or do your agilities fast and things like that. So because they know who you are. We know who Javon Baker is. We know his strengths. We know his weaknesses. The NFL know that times 100. Because they know everything. They know where you went to lunch, where you like to hang out. They know everything, and they're being dead serious when they say like people are out there watching you, seeing what you're doing, and they're NFL scouts looking to see what you're doing. They really are, because they can tell you where you were at this time. What'd you do at this bar when you were doing this? Did you get wasted and hammered, or were you just drinking water? Like those stories are true because they're making an investment. It's a business. They're investing hundreds of thousands, tens of millions of dollars into you. They want you to know everything about it. And I know you guys, a lot of y'all are business people. You're not going to pay anybody and you know nothing about them. You want to know everything about them. So,
all right. So let's fast forward draft night. Did you know whether you were going to get drafted or not ahead of time? And then did you sit there through all the rounds on pins and needles waiting to get drafted, or did you kind of know you were going to be undrafted free agent or what?
Yeah, so I knew I was going to be an undrafted guy. I was going to be a guy. I mean, my agent, the thing I loved about my agent, he was very upfront. Once he got my background, he had already done my background. He's like, listen, you want to go to the NFL, you want to play, you're going to have to get it out the mud. You're going to have to be an undrafted guy, special teams guy, a special teams demon, and work your way. And, plenty of guys do that. That's a route that a lot of guys are going to have to take, just each and every year. That's how you get on the field if you don't get drafted. If you're a first-round guy, you're going to be on special teams for 2 weeks of camp. Then they're like, all right, time to go to the second team. And 3 weeks into that, all right, you're going with the starters because they've invested millions of dollars into you. They're going to get a return on their investment sooner rather than later. But as an undrafted guy, you have to fight. And that was my thing. So I didn't really have any expectations. I was just, if I get drafted, cool. But I'm looking, undrafted and probably a tryout if possible. And that was my expectation.
So did you actually show up to camp? I thought you didn't you go to a camp?
Yeah. So I did the Dolphins camp. Didn't make it. And at that point, I'm telling you then, I knew when I did that, I was like, listen, everybody knows that
if I can't make it on the Dolphins, I can't make it anywhere.
And at the time, that was when, Brian Flores just got there. The team was they weren't as good. But again, some of these guys that are like what we, casual, normal fans think are terrible football players, they are some of the most elite athletes, but they're just way better athletes than even them. So it's such a fine line with saying that, he could be a terrible NFL player, but the fact that he's even there shows how good of a football player he really is. And then I had that realization. I was just like, listen, if I can't make this, I really don't have a chance.
Was that another league or anything?
Was that day one showing up to camp where you were just like,
just
looking around like, dang.
Guys are different, man. Like it's one of those things where you get out there and you just see the way they move, how big, and they're physically gifted guys. Now they're not the smartest guys. I always thought I was the smartest guy out there. I talked to Roger about that. Like I always knew where I had to be. I knew where all my teammates had to be, so I could tell you who messed up, why this play happened. I could tell you exactly why, from the D line to the linebackers to the safeties and corners. Like I knew all of that. But again, it's an athletic requirement because as much as I could know and as much as I could know a play was happening, if there's a guy who's just more gifted than me, it doesn't matter what I know because they're just more gifted, and that's what the game is. So I knew early, I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I'm not gonna.
Did you consider playing in another league or overseas or anywhere else?
Yeah, I did, but my whole thing was just, I got out of football all that I squeezed my orange and got all that I could out of it, and I was happy. I could live with that. I never thought that I would even get this far. I got a free education. I got, a pre-med, degree. I got the most out of it. And I always said, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. I did it to see, I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I couldn't, but I can live with it. I say, but now I have the information, if I can have a super child, I'll be like, hey, this is what you got to do. I tried it. I can show you the path to where you got to do, because I can look back at my career and see, from 8th grade, 7th grade. Like, I wish I would have done this more to prepare me for this moment. But you don't know that. I was just out there having fun playing. But yeah. So
you think that's fun, Trey? Wait till you do have kids, and wait till they do start playing sports. That's a whole other level of fun.
When your son's playing baseball, I'm like, oh yeah, Ben's into it. He's into it. So, yeah, but I mean, so I think these guys. I just hope that their agents are telling them the truth about what's going on, and I hope that they're very informed about what they're signing up for. Because agents can be very tricky about things. It's not all guys that are looking out for you. Some of these guys are looking out for themselves because it's a business. So I hope that, they're telling them, hey, this is where your draft stock is currently. If you do this, it can go up. You do this, it can go down. Like, I think that kind of upfrontness it helped me work out harder just because I knew my weaknesses and I knew what I had to work on to meet a requirement. If they're just like, oh yeah, you're perfect, you don't have to do anything, blah, 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 you can end up in a very bad situation. Like, if, for example, if Javon Baker, God forbid he doesn't, but if he's just like, oh, I'm good, I don't have to train, and he goes out there and pops, for example, like a 4.65, he could go from a day 2 guy, which I think that's probably where, people are saying like a day 2 kind of guy to undrafted. And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars just because he wants to relax when he has 6 to 8 weeks left out of everything you've worked for your entire life. You want to relax the last 6 to 8 weeks of it, so I just hope that they don't have that mentality and this is the most important 6 to 8 weeks of your life. This is it right here. So that's a little bit about the pro day process.
All right, Josh, I'm gonna correct myself real quick because I should have put up there Trey's pro day disaster as opposed to the student re-education, because you actually have the student re-education this week and a little insight about Matt Prater and some stories you wanted to tell. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to do that.
Sure. So can I ask Trey one? I'm going to ask Trey one question as we on YouTube all see his finger just right at the camera. One quick question, Trey, with all that knowledge, have you thought about coaching? Was that ever a thought?
Oh, yeah.
Trey and I have talked about that.
Yeah, I could have went and coached at Nebraska literally the second that I decided not to play. I had a job waiting for me there. I've had plenty of other, because I played with a lot of guys who kind of in the same situation as me. They're very smart, but they actually went into coaching. And like, I know a guy that's coaching in Georgia right now. I know a guy that's coaching with the Packers. But I mean, like I've told Roger, like off air, I've always kind of wanted to be, really good husband, dad. And I'm telling you, the lifestyle that these coaches live, especially college, it used to be the other way. NFL used to be the hard one. College, these guys are recruiting nonstop. And then it's late nights, early morning. I mean, I remember they'd wake up at 5 o'clock, get there at 5:30. They're not leaving until 11:30. Because that's what it takes now. When you're getting paid all this money, the expectation is you have to put in the work for it. So I just couldn't see. I love the game. I love the X's and O's. I love the coaching aspect. I just couldn't see myself doing that. Not because I couldn't, just I didn't want that lifestyle for not just, me, but, eventually I want kids, my wife, I didn't want that, and again, there's so much more to football. We're on the football podcast, obviously, but I mean, as you guys know, like there's so much more to it. And that's another thing I've talked with Roger. Like, I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. I think a lot of guys struggle with that. Thinking that, football is everything. But, so, yeah, that's why I never really got into coaching because, again, I'm not trying to be working 18 hours a day, go home and sleep. Like, I have no time to myself. It's just football, 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 football. I love football. And I don't love it that much,
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I never got that information off air, but I appreciate it because it sounds like there's a lot there, but there's also a lot of work there and time there.
Yeah.
And I can understand work-life balance. So we're talking about student re-education, and I'm going to bring all of you back to those of you who've been around UCF for a while, the 2005 Hawaii Bowl. And I know that Sheridan Hawaii Bowl is a poor sore point for many, but for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, in 2005, the then UCF Golden Knights, I think we actually were the Golden Knights specifically back then, faced Hawaii, went to Hawaii and faced Nevada. Nevada was the WAC champions. We were the runner-up for Conference USA, and we were 0-11 the previous season. And then we started the 2005 season 0-2. We had a 17-game losing streak. We beat Marshall. I loved that game. I was at that game. We took in the Citrus Bowl. We took the goalposts back to campus somehow, multiple miles away, and put them in the reflecting pond. We lost to Tulsa in a championship game, which is maybe that's another re-education. Student re-education is our fun time against Tulsa multiple times. We go out there, and it's a heck of a game. It is. You have Brandon Marshall is in that game and doing well. Stephen Moffitt is our quarterback. We have Kevin Smith, who is, there's 2 out of 3 that are NFL players right there. And you also have Matt Prater, who is 3 out of those 4 who are NFL players there. So I'll give you my perspective of a couple of things. But what you need to know if you were not a fan of UCF back then is that the end of the game, Matt Prater missed an extra point in overtime, and we lost 49-48. Now, I'm going to go 2 sides with this. One, why, if it weren't for Matt Prater, we're not in the game. And then I'm going to go afterwards, what happened on campus. So, Matt Prater is hitting everything. Every single field goal, 47, 46 yarders, every single point after attempt. And I wouldn't say for some reason, we were down 8, and in the third quarter, we start going for 2, and we start missing it. Maybe if we just kick field goals, yeah, I know analytics probably says to do it. So when we get to the fourth quarter, basically Nevada's up by 10. We get to the end zone. We get next possession. We get close to the end zone, but we can't punch it in. Prater hits a 46-yard field goal. Without that, we're not getting to overtime. Then we have an onside kick, and it's recovered by UCF. Without that, we're not going into overtime. Then Brandon Marshall catches a touchdown, and Matt Prater hits an extra point. Without that, we're not going into overtime. And yes, Nevada scored, we scored, and Matt Prater didn't hit that last field goal. That last extra point, and we lost. I don't have
Matt
the normal
Prater lost the game. That was the end of that story.
That is problem 1. I 100% disagree with that story.
You said it. I did.
We're not even in overtime without his phenomenal work and Brandon Marshall and Stephen Moffitt and Kevin Smith and others. It's not just those 3, but that's a big part of our offense. So this was when it was harder to get to a bowl game. This is when, and we'll talk about another time when we were supposed to go to our first bowl game, 98, and I think it was UCLA who was number 1 in the nation, or I forgot what that was, supposed to win a game that they lost, and we couldn't get a bowl game because we were independent or whatnot. It wasn't like it is now where we just kind of go to bowl games for most of the years. This was a big problem, and it was a big letdown, and the fan base was bad. Like, if you think it was bad now when we get blown out against the team that we shouldn't, Matt Prater was vilified. He had issues when he went onto campus. He had all kind. I don't know if he had death threats. I know we had a couple of our players that did, but it was bad, about as bad as you can think, which is unfortunate because our fan base shouldn't be like that. So at this time, I'm also teaching at UCF. That's when I started teaching, was at 2005, and I teach a large lecture at that point CGS 1060 and 2100 classes. If you're UCF students, you've probably taken that class. I'm guaranteeing you one of the people listening here has probably been one of my students. It just happens. I've probably taught on average about 20,000 students at this point. And in that class, in the first class, I have a conversation. It was BA 187. If you remember the business administration building, I remember the class in the classroom well, and I get in there, and I'm big. I talk about football, I talk about basketball, and all my classes currently do still have in the past. And I say what no one else is saying, that Matt Prater did not lose this game. So, and I kind of go into that with the same kind of, not soliloquy I was talking about now, but something around that. And I get booed in class, and everyone gets annoyed with me, but they kind of sort of see that a little bit at least. And it's not coming from fans, it's coming from the person instructing them about computer science. What I didn't know is that one of the members of the team were in that class. It was someone on the defensive line, and I can't pull the name out of my head. Probably shouldn't even say the name if it was because of FERPA, but we're talking 2 decades almost. But there was someone on the team in the class, and he told me thank you because he was roommates with Matt Prater, and the level of vitriol he has gotten via email and online, and this is early Facebook, so you had a UCF.edu account. It was bad. It was bad. And he said thank you because no one else on this campus that I've seen or heard has said anything about the fact that this, first of all, you shouldn't be this bad. I was talking about this in class. He's a fellow student. He's one of your peers, and we know it all sucks. He knows it sucks. Everyone knows this is a bad situation, but be better. And I didn't realize that his roommate was in the class. So that was kind of a nice scenario where, I know old school fans will probably comment on this and say he completely lost the game. And to that I say, we're not in the game without him. But that ending is horrible. And of course, now he's going to be probably one of our first Hall of Famers if Brandon Marshall isn't either. And both were playing in that game.
All right. Yep. The thing about Prater with that game, I agree with you. It's not all on him, and I'm sure it was pretty rough from him. It's a reminder for college athletes that it's tough. So I remember that was the time where we would do things like publish Matt Grothy's phone number and text him mercilessly and email.
We poked him. Like, I think when poking, it's still on Facebook. I think, but when poking was a new thing, I think he got poked about 2,000 times before a football game or something like. We did some. We as fans, and I'm sure most fans of college football have done some really poor things to college athletes, and it's not right. I'll be honest, it isn't.
All right, let's move on from the poking, and I'm going to bring Alan. I'm going to bring Alan to the stage. Alan has one fact for us this week on his Oxymoronic fun facts of the week.
All right, so going back to basketball, I looked up, obviously the Big 12 right now, as we've all talked about, is the deepest league in college basketball, currently with 8 teams ranked, and Texas, who's in the the votes to be ranked. So if you look at that, the conference has the potential to get 9 bids at minimum. If you look at Cincinnati's record and I can't remember one other team. They have damn good records. So there we go again. What?
It's all right. We're just
another
explosive.
Curse word. We're getting into late night. What did George O'Leary say? Anything after midnight was like bad.
Yeah,
well, officially
nothing good happens after
midnight. Yeah.
So the all-time record, so I was saying Cincinnati and one other team, I'm drawing a blank on who, all have a chance. So that would be 11 teams. So the all-time record for one conference sending teams to the big dance there is the 2011 Big East with 11 bids, and then only 3 other times have there been 9 bids from one conference, which was the 2018 ACC, the 2017 ACC, and the 2012 Big East. So if we do end up getting 9, which if currently how the records are, we could be one of 5 conferences in March Madness history to send that many teams to the tournament.
So basically, we joined the Big East late, but we still joined the Big East. All right. Thank you for that, Alan. I appreciate that. And Josh, real quickly, your sometimes funny fact of the week.
All right. So we're going to talk about this briefly in a moment, but as all of you know, because you are all UCF fans, so this should not be foreign to you, our 2024 cheerleading team stuck both of their last routines in the semifinals and finals, and they won the championship this week with Alabama in second place and Kentucky in third place, respectively. So the fun fact is, who won the 2020 D1A co-ed cheerleading title, and what was the order of the top 3 then?
I don't have the slightest idea.
Hold on, the cheerleading title for NCAA?
The D1A co-ed championship. Who won it in 2020, and what was the order of the top 3?
If you're asking me to guess, I'm just going to say Kentucky, Alabama was at least in that top 3 because they seem to be every time. They're the 2 other like juggernauts of cheerleading as far as that I know. But I'm just going to say those 2. I'm not going to be able to name you the 3. Maybe Louisville. I don't know. Maybe Louisville's good too. I don't know.
Kentucky, Alabama, and maybe UCF.
Alan, you got one?
I'll go Kentucky because I have heard that before. Tennessee and Texas.
All right, and I know the Cows won at some point too. I just don't remember if it was 2020. I really hope you wouldn't bring up a Cows win on this podcast.
No, I avoided that topic altogether. So I actually talked to the member of the 2020 UCF National Championship team today about that, and she was talking about her memories of being there in Orlando in that stadium and winning. And she said, it's weird because this is exactly what happened when I won it. Kentucky dropped, Alabama dropped, and we stuck it. So the exact same order in 2020, UCF, Alabama, Kentucky, is the exact same order in 2024, UCF, Alabama, Kentucky.
Yeah, UCF typically hovers around second place. If they aren't winning, it's second or third place. UCF has consistently, and hats off to Linda Gooch, one of the most underrated coaches who's done more with less than I think any other program on UCF's campuses, and has consistently for well over 20 years built this program from scratch. And not only have they done that, but they've got a big presence in the community. A lot of the UCF cheerleaders coach locally as well. My daughter has a lot of UCF coaches that are currently on either current or former members of the UCF cheer squad. And they're great people and great representatives for the community. So congratulations to Linda. Congratulations to the team, and bless you to Alan. All right. Moving on. Yeah, that's the first one we got all show, Ben. Come on, bro.
Besides the beginning. I mean, for the cheerleaders, national championship deserves the double thumbs up, fireworks explosion.
All right, so we're going to let you lead into, since that was your fact, we're going to let you lead into the quick update on other UCF sports.
That's great. There's so many things going on at UCF right now. It's a little impressive, actually. So we want to start out with, obviously, the 2024 D1A co-ed cheerleading national champions that are UCF Knights. They won in Orlando, Florida, and they won convincingly, as we noted there. Women's hoops, we're down to 0-4. In Big 12 play, they lost to a ranked West Virginia University team, and guess what they get next? They get a top 15 or 12 or 13, depending on the rankings, really, right now, Baylor. So the hits keep on coming, both in women's and in men's basketball. And I agree with you, Roger. I think this is a good team, and it's going to get better and better as the years come in. We're in, again, one of the best conferences basketball, period, men's and women's teams. So I feel like we'll be able to recruit and keep doing well. Hopefully we get our first win soon. Women's track. I'm gonna. You got to give me the name. Renaya, thank you. I had it 2 hours ago. I should know it because Renaya is going to be our first.
2 hours and 19 minutes ago, Josh.
Yes, thank you. Renaya Jones won the 200 meters, secured the top collegiate time in all of college, once again in the 60-meter hurdles at the Rod McCravey Memorial. They are going to go to Texas Tech for sprints and distance this coming week, and Vanderbilt for field. They split up and go to different competitions depending on where they are on the track and field team. The women's track and field team, there are a lot of women on that team. I was scrolling through to see some things for prep on here. I'm like, there are like 20, 30 people on this team. It's pretty deep, so that's wonderful. Men's tennis is now back. Tennis is back for women and for men. The UCF men's tennis beat UNC Wilmington 4-2 and Coastal Carolina 4-1. There are 2 more matches coming up at home on January 20th and January 21st versus North Florida in Georgia Southern.
Under new leadership this year, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're doing good to start off. We have UCF women's tennis. They're going to start right with a top 25 team. They're going to play Georgia Tech and Bethune-Cookman on January 20th. And Roger, are you hearing the same good things about baseball that I'm hearing and seeing about that team that's coming up soon?
Yes, Rich Wallace, UCF alum. Ben has some history with them, and he'll talk about that as well. Very, very good coach. He brought some new blood into the program. I'm hearing a different approach from what we're used to with Greg Lovelady. A little less bunting, and I was reading today. So thank you to whoever did that research. I can't credit you right now. But just simply because I can't remember, but the under 25%, we brought in the hitters that we're bringing in are under 25% on strikeouts. Now we're bringing a lot of really, really solid players back. Andrew Sundin, I'm excited to see what he's going to do this year. He's a big hitter and played really well as a freshman, really highly touted recruit. And some of the other supporting cast that were big hitters that we retained. Now we did lose a couple. Pitching is always the question when it comes to college baseball. We had some guys that were injured, had to undergo Tommy John. They're coming back. And supposedly stronger than ever. So we'll see how long that lasts, if they can sustain that for an entire season, and what the rotations will look like. But you should expect less bunting, a lot more hitting, a lot more contact. And so when, we played a lot of small ball last year, but when you're playing small ball, you also want to make sure that the next guy up is a solid hitter typically. And, we had a lot of guys that were bunting back to back. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what the change in the philosophy is. I'm not saying that this is a regional team this year. I don't know what we're going to get under Rich Wallace's tutelage. But I do feel like he's got the program on the right path to get us there. And I do think they're going to surprise some people this year. Unfortunately, JRP was one of those players last year that played pretty well for us. So we will miss him as he moves on to pursue the NFL. But baseball is a program that's kind of been languishing for a while. And I feel like who Rich is, the type of style that he plays, his ties to the local community, his passion for UCF, I think that will bode well for us in the long run. And early returns on what I'm hearing from practice is that we've got some guys that can really, can really hit. So the big question for me is going to be, what's the pitching staff going to look like, and how good are they going to be this year? And I think that'll determine how far they will go. Ben, do you want to add anything to that? Because I know you follow baseball, and obviously you know Rich pretty well.
Yeah, we're 1 month away as of tonight. Well, I guess less than 1 month away because we're past midnight now. But yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add as far as early returns from practice versus what you have just stated. I agree that we're probably going to be a little bit more of a consistent hitting team under this coaching staff than what we potentially have had in the past. We have had spots of power in the past. I think last year we led the country in home runs for a short stint, so it wasn't all small ball in the past. But I think we were kind of relying on a little bit of up and down, maybe strikeout or home run type
higher
deal.
Strikeout ratios for sure.
Yeah, so I think that bringing that more consistency is something that Rich and his staff will be able to do it. Yeah, as you mentioned, I was really, really excited. I still am, that when he was announced as the new head coach of UCF baseball. He's a guy that I think he came into UCF maybe a year before me, but yeah, he's a guy that I went to UCF with. He was on the baseball team when I was on the basketball team, and so I've known him now for over 20 years, and he's just a great guy. And I was able to. My son went to the UCF youth baseball camp 2 weeks ago, and so I was able to. One of the days I was able to go pick him up, and I happened to be walking by, and so we were able to connect for a little while, me and Rich and I, and so it was great to see him, and something that he's known for, and you touched on it a little bit prior to coming back home to UCF, and I think it's one of the main reasons why he got this job is under some of the guys that he's been assistant to in the past, in particular the old Notre Dame coach that came over to Florida State, which past midnight for some reason his name is escaping me right now, but phenomenal baseball coach that he was under for a while. But Rich is known for recruiting, and he will be able to bring in the right guys and build this program in the right way. You mentioned his connections to the local recruiting scene. I think he's going to be able to build upon that. And with the Big 12, which is a good really solid baseball conference. I think they got about 5 teams from the Big 12.
One of the top.
Yeah, in the preseason top 25. So it's going to be a night in and night out thing as well for baseball. And that's really exciting. I mean, you got teams like Texas Tech, you got Texas, you got TCU is a phenomenal baseball program. Houston as well. So yeah, you definitely have some teams in this. Iowa State usually always has a pretty good baseball program. So anyways, you got some teams in this conference. So it'll be difficult potentially year one, but I think that we'll see some great things this year and set the foundation for the future. And I'm excited to see Rich at the helm, and hopefully we may, hopefully I can maybe convince him to be on the show and give us a few minutes of his time. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, Ben's working on that for the next couple of weeks. So we're hoping to do a preseason show with him to kind of get his point of view of where we're at, where we're headed, and what his goals are for this team in the next couple of weeks. So super excited about that. So be on the lookout. We don't want to do it too early because, we're still, less than a month out, but almost a month out. And we will make sure that, we'll bring him to the airwaves if we can. So thank you, Ben. Super excited about that. And let's close it out. My final thoughts. Heck of a show this week, guys. Basketball was super exciting. It's good to be excited about the basketball program again. Part of that is the Big 12. Part of that is, competitiveness. Like we've all said, we want them to do well. This is Johnny's chance to basically show that he can move us forward in this program, and we hope that he does that because we've all met him. I've spent a significant amount of time talking to him and his wife, and I do want him to do well, not just for UCF but also for Johnny. So at the end of the day, let's hope for some more exciting basketball games. Real quick, I promised you guys we'd pick. So lightning round, real quick, yes or no. Ben, do we beat Texas?
Yes.
Alan, do we beat Texas?
Yes.
Josh, do we beat Texas?
I don't want to be right. No.
All right. You're not going to that game, right?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say we beat Texas. I think they're beatable from what I've seen on tape. And if this team can carry over the defensive momentum, they're going to be really hard to beat. So I'm going to say yes, we beat Texas. And we'll talk about the rest of the game after that. But for now, thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you again for everything that you're doing for us. And make sure you give us feedback. Go Knights and
charge on.
That was really exciting after 2 hours and 30 minutes.
We're not talking Houston at all. I guess they are a problem.
That's the problem.